Chapter 4 Tier Apache? Launch, hurry up. Don't let her approach. My god, what kind of person is this? The other two Apache pilots screamed frantically in the cockpit, and the movements in their hands were not slow at all. After the Apache quickly lifted into the air, all the remaining missiles on the plane bombarded the Wonder Woman. Go up. I still don't believe him, the missile. Can't kill him. Both drivers are a little crazy. To be cautious, Apache still maintains a considerable ascent. Even if more than 30 missiles went down, they still did not advance rashly, but kept a sufficient distance. It is enough to see how much they attached importance to this assassination. But whoosh, 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 a black and gloomy fighter plane suddenly hovered in the air at the moment. As if it had appeared suddenly, a fascinating color gleamed in the night sky. That fighter? I was caught off guard by these guys before, and Wayne Base hadn't had time to react, but Wonder Woman's delay ensured that Lucius could start controlling these fighters. Oh, shit, what is this? The Apache pilot's pupils shrank slightly, looking at the bat fighter floating in the air. A touch of amazement appeared in his eyes. Although they didn't know what this behemoth was, they knew that this must be a very powerful weapon. Apache is not an opponent of these fighters at all. Go, go. The two pilots were completely panicked, not even looking at Wonder Woman, and then quickly lifted into the air. Can you escape? Lucius' voice came from the villa. Dear madam, you can come down. Huh? Wonder Woman suddenly fell to the ground, and then the two wings and front end of the bat fighter instantly stretched out a stream of black artillery, and then from the artillery, a line of death was shot out. Clatter, 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 clatter. Countless firepower was launched towards the missile in midair, and the entire sky seemed to be setting off firework. Boom, boom, boom. With a violent roar, the eardrums of the exploded person rose. The artillery looked terrifying, and its power was definitely terrifying. There are cruel mushroom clouds blooming in the air, and under the artillery, a few positioned missiles have shuttled quickly towards the two Apaches desperately fleeing. Who would have thought that there are so many terrifying fighters in this base? Do not. Damn. This villa, how come there are so many fighters in the villa? The two Apache drivers roared there, but in their eyes, they had seen several brilliant firelights flying towards them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The positioning missile was so fast that it instantly bombarded the two fighter planes, and a violent sound resounded in the sky again. The tongue of fire from the explosion engulfed them, together with the helicopter, leaving only the steel shells of two helicopters. Boom, boom. After two explosions, all threats from the world have disappeared. Before and after, it only took a minute. From the Wonder Woman's sword smashing the missile to the bat fighter bombing the sky, only 41 seconds passed. The Hydra terrorists on the ground obviously do not know that their air force is completely finished. They are heading towards Wayne Manor. Hey, Hydra. Lucius curled his lips. There was no fluctuation in his heart and even wanted to laugh a little. In fact, Leeway had expected these things before, but he didn't take it seriously. After all, Hydra seems to him like a jumping beam joker. Leeway broke Hydra's big deal. If they don't retaliate, would it be weird? However, it is indeed a bit beyond everyone's expectations. After all, it took Hydra 3 months to retaliate against Leeway. I have to say that they can bear it. Definitely, what Leeway didn't know was, in fact, the Winter Soldier arrived 3 months ago, but because of caution, Baron Strucker asked them to contact the remnants of Hydra in the United States and launch an offensive together. However, Hydra was almost uprooted in the United States. Even for Baron Strucker, it took more than 2 months to contact Hydra's few remaining troops. Moreover, the weapons are also provided by them. The 3 Apaches are almost their last armored combat capability. Otherwise, they don't mind driving tanks and armored vehicles to assassinate Leeway. However, even with this kind of firepower, there was still no scum that was eliminated by the bat fighter and Diana. Dear madam, I will leave it to you. An old voice came from the ground. The old butler gave a chuckle. A look of excitement flashed across his face. After all, he really hasn't encountered any dangerous things for so long. And now, dozens of heavily armed Hydra elements should bring him a little happiness. After all, many people don't touch this kind of thing anymore. Clear. Diana nodded lightly. A flash of anger flashed over her beautiful face. I will make them pay. Anyone who has destroyed his beautiful thoughts will feel angry. And he is also a militant Amazon warrior. She was in a very unbeautiful mood by this sudden assassination, so when she shot her, she directly blasted a Kopak. I have to say that this female man is quite violent. Therefore, someone will inevitably pay the price. The screams sounded from the top of the building, and Howard, Stark, and Lucius simply took a glass of red wine and sat there, looking at the monitor, looking extremely comfortable. Everything in front of them seemed to be no threat to them. These two are both corgi crazy demons, and they definitely don't dare to rush out, but no one wants to get close to them. Without their permission, no one can enter the bat base. As for getting in from the elevator shaft, that is even more a joke. If it is so simple that it can be invaded, then the bat base will not have to be mixed. Snapped. The lights in the villa have been turned off. This is definitely not done by the people of Hydra. Turning off the lights will help people hide. They will not be as stupid as the gangsters on TV. This light was turned off by the old butler. In the dark, an old man in a tuxedo stood tall in a corner of the garage, holding a shotgun, and said nothing. I have been a steward for a long time, and perhaps many people have forgotten that he was once the best agent in MI6. None of them? Wow. The fully armed Hydra elements quickly marched towards the Wayne base. There was a rustling noise on their bodies, which was caused by the loud movement and the sound of their equipment colliding with each other. And the more so, the more proof that these people are well prepared. The flashlights installed on the firearms were swept from all corners of the villa from time to time. 10 people were divided into 6 groups and searched in the manner constantly, never letting go of any corner, because their purpose is to kill all the living people that may exist in the villa. One does not stay. Boom. A very sudden and violent gunshot cut through the quiet night at the moment, and then, there was a burst of constantly gunshots. A group of 10 people, such a team looks a little bloated in a villa. However, their safety is also guaranteed to the utmost extent. Even if a few people are dead, the remaining people can still form a search and attack without dead ends. However, in less than 2 minutes, the battle was over. The gunfire also ended. A group of Hydra members outside suddenly looked up, obviously a little weird. Solved the opponents so quickly? But they didn't stop. Instead they continued to search other places, trying their best to find alive people, but unfortunately, they didn't find it. Except dead man? In the wide garage, or parking lot, the only thing left at the moment is the sound of scared vehicle sirens. On the ground, there were 10 heavily armed terrorists lying corpses. Yes, is it their people? Wow. The Hydra elements who had just rushed in suddenly raised their guns forward. Unfortunately, they were a step late. Click. Boom. The stamina shotgun roared like a beast, and then one by one tyrannical armor-piercing bullets pierced their heads in an instant. Snapped. A brain burst is more spectacular and bright than a punch to break a watermelon. Click. 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 The shotgun quickly harvested the enemy's life, just like Deadman's sickle. It never needed to be replaced. Headshot. There are dense bullet holes and blood everywhere on vehicles and walls. And standing beside a pile of corpses was an old man with a tall and straight figure holding a shotgun. At the moment he was holding a cigar in his mouth, blowing smoke rings. She was using a white towel with great interest, carefully and repeatedly, carefully wiping the blood from her hands. On the ground, blood has dripped all over the ground. Only the corpse with residual heat proved that it was how this old man managed to get rid of 2 Hydra elite terrorists in just a few minutes. After changing the magazine twice, the old butler twisted his neck, and then he took the shotgun again and walked upstairs step by step. The villa at the Leeway Wayne base has 8 floors. The 3rd floor is a scientific research base, the 2nd floor is a parking lot, the 1st floor is a variety of entertainment facilities, and the 1st floor is where various living rooms and guest rooms are located. As for the 2nd floor and above, it is the rooms of the host and guests. The 4th floor and the 5th floor are Leeway's private domain. The terrorists of Hydra were too confident, so confident that they scattered all their non-group members on the 1st floor. In normal times, this is correct. The search can be faster and more efficient because it is scattered, ensuring that Leeway will not run away. Moreover, although the villa is large, it is relatively speaking, a group of 10 can also ensure the safety of the search to the maximum extent. The light of the flashlight is constantly shining in every corner, and they will not let go of any space that may be hidden. However, what made them a little desperate was that they couldn't get inside this villa at all, except for the parking lot. On the rest of the floor, they couldn't even break the reflective glass outside, but they were greeted by countless bullets and a woman who was so perverted and pointed. Puff, puff, puff. One sword one. Diana killed all the way from the 5th floor to the 3rd floor. There were dozens of Hydra elements who died under his sword. They must bear the anger of the Amazons. In his opinion, this is a kind of blasphemy. So, die. Puff. Diana once again wiped out the Hydra elements on the 3rd floor and flew towards the 2nd floor. Boom. With the sound of shotguns, the old butler also opened the prelude to the killing on the ground floor again. 1st floor, leave it to me. Robin Tim Drake, who had just taken over, stood in front of the door on the 1st floor with an unusually large figure, quite in a posture of one man and one man. He is holding a Gatling M134 rapid-fire machine gun in one hand. The huge and heavy machine gun is carried by him, and in the other hand, he is holding a Desert Eagle. The sharp contrast between the two guns made Tim seem to have a sense of rebirth of the Terminator Schwarzenegger. Gatling M134 rapid-fire machine gun. This is the old one among the Terminators. The machine gun has a maximum rate of fire of up to 6,000 rounds per minute. It is known as the Vulcan cannon. The barrel of the gun also looked extremely captivating, just like the same machine cannon, and the 6 movable gun rails roared like a fascinating roar. The countless bullets landed quickly, and the huge amounts of Gatlin's barrels spewed out a thick tongue of fire. Die to me, assholes. Tim was sweeping there, and the Hydra militants who had just rushed in were instantly beaten into a pool of flesh. And the guy who was just about to dodge to the side saw a small bullet in his sight. Oh, shit, that guy still has a pistol. With a dual purpose, Tim was shooting with a Gatling gun in one hand, but with the Desert Eagle in the other. Boom! The bullet accurately submerged a militant's eyebrows, and instantly penetrated his brain. In an instant, blood and brain plasma spewed out, bursting out of the back of his head, spraying on his teammates. And his corpse also fell weakly at the same time. Although the recoil of the Desert Eagle has been criticized for a long time, its power is generally recognized as large. In other words, as long as it can adapt to master the recoil of the Desert Eagle, this is the strongest weapon. Definitely, the main reason Tim uses the Desert Eagle is because he is handsome. With Gatlin, it is simply his favorite of fighting madmen. After all, his current power has surpassed Captain America? Come on, chopsticks. You dare to retaliate with just a little shrimp. Robin Tim was smiling wildly at that, but Gatling in his hand was not slow at all, shooting frantically towards the door. On the ground, muddy flesh had been spread on the ground, and several corpses headshot by the Desert Eagle. How to do? Several Hydra elites from Europe, hiding outside the manor, couldn't help but swallowed their saliva. Too frightening? They saw the bat fighter just now and swept the 3 Kopaks they arranged directly into powder. And the dozen Hydra elites who rushed in were all lying there right now. There are hundreds of people. Now it is estimated that it will be difficult to collect 50 of them. Let's go back. This is terrible. They still have such a terrifying fighter. One of Hydra's subordinates said to the leader. The leader took out his pistol and shot the guy directly without thinking about it. Who else wants to retire? The leader yelled. Everyone in Hydra couldn't help shrinking their heads. They don't want to die. Rush in for me, I'll cover behind. And the Winter Soldier. It's your turn to play. The leader spoke a bit tyrannically towards a black-clothed hooded man behind him. And when I heard that Winter Soldiers were to be sent, a group of Hydra elites suddenly felt a little excited. Let's go in. Ants, Red Eagle, we are in charge of that old man. The Winter Soldier treats that stupid man on the 1st floor. As for the Heavenly, the leader's pupil shrunk slightly, looking at the Wonder Woman who was continuously beheading on the 2nd floor. He said, the rest of the people, all attack that woman for me. You must kill her for me. Oh shit. He cursed secretly, but there was a trace of fear on his face. That woman is really terrible? She has already killed the 4th floor by herself. Is this still a human? Quick fight, wait until we get rid of the 1st floor and underground, and then besiege the woman together. Come on, attack. On the 1st floor, take someone to cover the Winter Soldier. The leader waved his hand, and the remaining Hydra elites immediately flew towards the Wayne base. This time, it was undoubtedly more violent than before. They have a clear division of labor. The people who rushed in did not rush to aim at the Wonder Woman upstairs, but pretended to attack Tim at the door to cover the Winter Soldier. As for the leader and his subordinates, they aimed at the old Butler. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The elites of Hydra are not talking about it. At the moment when the leader fired a shot, several rifles shot at Tim in an instant. The flames of war surged again in an instant. Moreover, other Hydra members are also moving closer to Tim. 9 rifles, divided into 2 batches, fired continuously at Tim's whole body. Boom, boom, boom. The gravel on the wall was hit and flew up, and the densely packed bullet holes almost made people frightened. 9 people, 9 rifles. The 2 sides cooperated and divided into 2 sides in a tacit understanding. They don't need to pretend, they just need to shoot Tim to death in the safest way. Because they have all read the information, they don't know this brawny man, but looking at his strong body, anyone can conclude that he is rushing forward, and no one is his opponent in close combat. Therefore, Tim, who was suppressing them with firepower, couldn't raise his head. At the very least, they think so. Boom! But what they didn't expect was that in an instant, Tim directly threw his Gatling gun at the Hydra on the side. Boom! The heavy Gatling gun hit the Hydra members. But Robin's whole person rolled directly, avoiding a round of shots extremely flexibly. Boom! Boom! The bullet from the Desert Eagle in his hand was not slow at all, and it accurately hit the heads of 2 terrorists. 2 headshots? No one thought that the man who stood at the door like an iron tower had such agile skills. What's more abnormal is that his subconscious reaction was almost completed in the blink of an eye. Before, it was because they had their guns pointed at them, and just pulling the trigger was enough to suppress him. After all, he is a flesh and blood body. Without Robin's casual suit, he cannot be indestructible at all. Therefore, he can only go around behind these people. And now that they have come around, then they will never have a chance to shoot again. Boom, boom, boom. Rhythmic and continuous gunshots sounded. A few seconds later, of the 10 Hydra elites, none of them can stand up. 10 bullets, not one was wasted, all hit their foreheads precisely. The magazines of the 2 Desert Eagles have all been emptied. Then, when Robin shot the remaining 4 bullets, something was wrong. Dang, dang, dang. All the bullets were blocked by a silver arm. Ding clang clang. All the bullets from Tim's Desert Eagle pistol hit a metal arm without even leaving a trace of bullet marks. Roar! The metal arm slowly hung down, revealing the iconic mask, as well as a very long hair. Tim was stunned. Obviously he didn't expect that among these guys, there was still such a good player hiding. Roar! With a loud roar like a beast, this guy with silver arms obviously still has a grenade launcher in his hand, but he doesn't use it. Snapped! He threw the gun directly on the ground, and then straight pounced on Tim. Winter Soldier? Hydra's strongest weapon is finally here? Winter Soldier? His real name is Bucky Barnes, who was the closest comrade in arms of the Captain of the United States in World War II. Later, in an action at the end of World War II, he fell into the sea with the captain and was frozen. But unlike Captain America when he was rescued, the people of Hydra found and saw him, installed a robotic arm on his broken arm, and trained it to be an agent loyal to Hydra only by brainwashing Winter Soldier. Since then, Bucky has completed various assassination missions around the world for the evil organization Hydra as a Winter Soldier. It's just that he is the first time he has performed tasks for Hydra. It can be seen that Hydra's brainwashing is very successful. It was so successful that he had washed his brains out of order, so he didn't need a gun and he had to play close combat. Since you are going to fight, then I will play with you. Tim turned his head and looked at the guy who was a head shorter than him. After being injected with the 3rd generation super soldier serum, Tim hadn't played well with anyone. He only knew how strong he was, and how strong he was, he always wanted to try it. Looking around, he found that there were no enemies. Tim hooked the Winter Soldier in front of him. Come on, fight me. Winter Soldier didn't have any nonsense. His eyes were red, and his kick was lifted toward Tim's chest. Roar! There seemed to be an air current in the air, and the strength of Winter Soldier was not to be underestimated. Originally thought that this guy in front of him was just a Tim with some skills, and suddenly put away his contempt. This opponent is very strong. Huh? Tim slammed to one side, and instantly avoided Winter Soldier's kick. And the kick containing Winter Soldier's strong power suddenly kicked on the wall behind Tim. Click! The solid concrete wall at the entrance of Wayne Manor instantly created a pothole. Boom! The walls around the pothole are also cracked inch by inch. Good chance. Seeing Winter Soldier's foot stuck in the wall, Tim's eyes lit up, and then he hit Winter Soldier's head with a punch. Winter Soldier gave Tim a mocking look and watched his opponent punch him. This guy just raised his silver left arm and raised it slightly. Boom! Tim only felt that his punch had hit a thick iron plate. A violent countershock force made his pupils shrink slightly. This metal arm, so strong? Wow! Winter Soldier pulled his foot from the wall, then squeezed his head, and gave Tim a cruel smile, but the next second, it moved. Boom! 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 The two quickly confronted each other, but Tim became more and more frightened as he fought. The guy with his face covered in front of him is just like a fierce beast. He is a body strengthened by the serum of a super soldier. In terms of strength, he is actually only equal to him. Slightly, a little bit of advantage, but this kind of gap is not obvious. It was made up for by Winter Soldier's metal arm. This kid, has he also been injected with super soldier serum? In fact, Tim was right. The Winter Soldier in front of him was indeed injected with super soldier serum by Hydra, so his explosive power and physical strength were so strong. In that case, I won't fight against you. You have a weapon anyway. Huh? A tactical dagger suddenly appeared in Tim's left hand. Roar! Without hesitation, he directly reached out and wiped the dagger toward the Winter Soldier's neck, striving to kill with one blow. Since you can't regret it, you can only win with weapons. Clang! If it's an ordinary person, at the moment, facing Tim's sudden attack, I'm afraid he will dodge directly. However, Winter Soldier is no ordinary person. He directly stretched out his mechanical left hand and blocked it in front of him. His eyes flashed with thick disdain. Noisy? The dagger was cutting on the metal arm, making a crisp sound, and even the slightest spark of gas had been gassed, but the Winter Soldier was unscathed. The stainless steel arm with adamantium is as strong as vibranium. Therefore, ordinary daggers didn't cause a trace of harm to him at all. Boom! It was another powerful confrontation. Tim took 2 steps back and Bucky took 3 steps back. Although Tim's strength was dominant, Winter Soldier's robotic arm made up for the gap. Even Tim is not as good as that. Both people became angry. Come again. Tim yelled and rushed towards Winter Soldier again. Although Winter Soldier's mind was not normal, he was not stupid to let Tim fight. The two people twisted together again. Boom! Tim's kick was firmly on the inside of Winter Soldier's thigh, but it's still a bit biased, otherwise the effect will be even greater. But Winter Soldier's physical fitness is different from ordinary people. Even if Tim kicked it with all his strength, he just shook his body, but his mechanical arm slammed down on Tim's shoulder fiercely. Boom! 1 kick for 1 punch. Winter Soldier still has the advantage. Tim's expression changed a little, and the force on the mechanical arm almost pierced the strengthening shoulder. Opponent, but still like a okay person. Even, he had come back to his senses and hit his head again with a punch. Tim naturally wouldn't sit still. His rich combat experience told him that he should never be entangled with him in close combat with a person whose power is far beyond him. Otherwise, it will only be oneself who will suffer from strengths. Use your flexible advantages and speed to interfere with sneak attacks. Therefore, Robin kicked Winter Soldier to no avail. He made a judgment in an instant, and took the opportunity to relay his body back. And at that moment, Winter Soldier's metal arm had already swung a punch. Roar! Only a millisecond difference. He almost punched Tim in the face, but it was not enough. Leeway kicked Winter Soldier again, and his body retreated directly with this force, leaving Winter Soldier's attack range. And this kick finally succeeded. A successful kick. The third leg between Winter Soldier's legs. Well, Winter Soldier's expression was a little unnaturally distorted. At best, he was just a brash man who relied on brute force, plus he was brainwashed at all, and he didn't know how to use his brain at all. So, how could Tim's opponent be proficient in hundreds of fighting skills? There is a play. Tim couldn't help being overjoyed. Seeing that his fight was effective, he was about to rush to Bucky again, but Bucky suddenly rolled outside. Boom! A fiery red longsword that fell from the sky pierced straight into the ground where Bucky had just been. Wonder Woman, here comes the kill. Click. There was a huge amount of crack in the ground instantly. If it weren't for Winter Soldier's quick dodge, this sword would be enough to split him into two. Huh? Wonder Woman retracted the sword abruptly, and then fell to the ground lightly, staring directly at the Winter Soldier who had just stood up. 2-1. The situation suddenly became clear. Not to mention that Bucky is not the opponent of Wonder Woman and Tim, or Diana alone, who can directly abuse Winter Soldier. What? Winter Soldier roared unwillingly, but Tim shook his head. Slightly. Until now, he didn't know how powerful the young girl who was following his master was. With one sword, the ground was directly split in half. How much strength did it take? Give it to me. The girl yelled to Tim behind her, and then she held a shield in one hand and a sword in the other, ready to rush towards Bucky. Diana, step back. A lazy voice, but also at this moment, passed into everyone's ears from the outside of the 4th floor. Master. Boss. Tim and Diana couldn't help being overjoyed, and they both looked up at Leeway who was standing on the 4th floor. Leeway, who was injected with 5 super soldier serums, finally woke up. Leeway nodded gently, and stretched his body constantly there to adapt to the body that had just been strengthened by the 5 super soldier serums and almost exploded. Fortunately, this super soldier serum has no side effects. Fortunately, Leeway's body is strong enough. Under such a powerful transformation, Leeway abruptly survived, and then, the results are gratifying. Leeway only felt that his body was filled with an extremely tyrannical force. This force can penetrate gold and cracked rocks. He has an intuition that, even if there is a mountain in front of him, he can slam through a fist and directly penetrate a cave. Well, it is so strong. This is the abnormal body transformed by the 5 super soldier serum. Just so, let this brainwashing guy try my power. Huh? Without even thinking about it, Leeway jumped off the 4th floor. There was a sound of huge amounts of on the ground, and Diana and Tim's expressions could not help but froze. Obviously, they didn't expect that Leeway would jump off the 4th floor and then make such a big battle. The earth shook a bit. Then, click. The place where Leeway was standing instantly split into countless pieces, and it was still cracking open at a speed that could be discerned by the naked eye. Tim swallowed, feeling a little depressed. This is also an injection of super soldier serum. Why is the young master so strong? Is it fake? Tim looked at the sky, and while constantly doubting his life, Diana also flashed a shock in her wonderful eyes, and a strong sense of warfare appeared on her face. It seems that the stronger Leeway is, the more excited she is. Next, leave it to me. Leeway suddenly made a sound like frying beans. He stretched his arms, and his whole body seemed to be fully opened. An extremely powerful breath spread out instantly. Boom! With the momentum, the flowers and plants of Wayne's base were directly cut off by the roots, and the pupils of Bucky on the opposite side couldn't help but shrink. Petal? He was just about to launch an attack on Leeway, and couldn't help taking a step back. There was a deep jealousy in the biting pupils. The person who suddenly appeared in front of him gave Bucky a terrifying feeling, even surpassing that woman. Master, so strong. Tim pursed his mouth. His face was extremely bitter, but Diana was more and more interested in Leeway. She had never thought that this seemingly calm boss would get angry and be so powerful. You guys have a good fight, but I haven't started the fight yet, Leeway said to Tim and Diana. In fact, he didn't want to come out at the end, but there is no way. The phone needs the power of the hero to unlock the hero. The Winter Soldier in front of him is a superhero in Marvel. To gain the power of a hero, you must defeat your opponent in person to get it, so Leeway had to go downstairs. Kneel down, or surrender to me. Leeway looked at the scared Winter Soldier in front of him, and spoke slightly. Roar. However, Winter Soldier roared at Leeway like a beast. After that, his body had already crossed over. The silver arm carried his full strength and hit Leeway with a punch. The power increase of the robotic arm also reached its extreme in an instant. Just now he and Tim played against him, and Bucky didn't even use the power increase of the robotic arm. This is Bucky's strongest support. The mechanical arm can increase the strength of his whole body by 6 times in an instant. Boom! Carrying Bucky's strongest punch, it pierced straight towards Leeway, and the air seemed to be completely torn apart. In front of Bucky's fist, it had become an absolute vacuum. Die. A hoarse voice came from Bucky's mouth, and then, the fist had reached Leeway's body, and seeing this fist, it was about to reach Leeway's chest. Leeway smiled, dead. Is this guy she's hile afraid? I am now, but I am even scared of myself? Boom! An endless and powerful punch finally hit Leeway's chest with a dull loud noise. But the imaginary knock-up Leeway did not happen. Leeway's body just didn't sway, standing there, his smile still remained there, as if he had just punched it, as if it was tickling. Bucky was taken aback, obviously unable to believe that such a powerful punch hadn't had any effect. Even Leeway's clothes are not wrinkled? Boss. Diana on the side was surprised. Roar made a sound. She didn't expect that Leeway would not evade and was directly hit by Bucky. Master. Tim was also taken aback. Why doesn't this young master hide? Because, it doesn't hurt at all. Leeway smiled slightly and looked at Bucky, whose face was gradually freezing. He just hit the strongest punch of his robotic arm, as if it hit a solid iron wall, and then the huge amounts of countershock force made Bucky's face a little bit distorted. Although the mechanical arm was made of metal, his body was still there, so the severe pain suddenly spread in his brain. It's been a long time. I haven't felt the pain for a long time. But now, Bucky feels the piercing pain from the bone marrow. What? He screamed, his whole person a little mad. Impossible? Why is this guy's chest harder than steel bars? With a punch by yourself, will it be yourself that hurts? Bucky's facial features were all kneaded together, and the feeling of his punch just now was completely immersed in his mind, making him a trace of fear. This person is not an opponent at all. Retreat. A word came to Bucky's mind, and he exerted force on his feet, ready to withdraw. But obviously, the other party will not give him a chance to retreat. Why, hit me, just want to run. Is superhero so unscrupulous? Leeway looked at Bucky's foot and said lightly, since you hit me, then, let me punch you too. Sneer? Before Bucky had time to react, Leeway, who was standing motionless, made a move. Whoosh! His hand stretched forward sharply, directly hitting a short punch. An afterimage flashed from Diana's eyes, and Tim on the side didn't even see Leeway's shot. Too fast? A simple punch? Simply powerful. Rumbling in an instant, the air made a loud noise like a muffled thunder, and then the air in the entire Wayne Manor seemed to be evacuated in an instant. Crackle! A sonic boom resounding in everyone's ears, and even with Leeway's punches, all flocked to Bucky, who was on the opposite side with endless fear. Do not. Bucky uttered a human roar. Although he is a test subject and has been brainwashed, the human instinct to fear death is still there, so he subconsciously embraced his hands and resisted his chest. The silver mechanical arm shines more and more in the dark. Boom! Leeway's fist hit the silver arm firmly. Then, Bucky flew out like a cannonball. Click! Click! The Hydra organization helped Winter Soldier's stainless steel metal silver arm made of adamantium, and there was a cracking sound. Boom! 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 Countless flowers, plants, and trees were all knocked down by Bucky's flying body, and finally, they smashed into a thick wall, forming a big herringbone. Tim and Diana both watched this scene in shock. Leeway's punch just now didn't have much strength at all, but the weird man with the metal arm was directly knocked into the air by him. That's not a big deal, that metal arm seems to have been smashed too. Oh my god. Tim swallowed. How could he not believe that the power of Leeway's punch just now was so strong? He knew the weird arm. After all, I just fought with him, and I couldn't compete with his arm. But now, he was opened and cracked by his young master with a soft punch. Tim felt a deep power gap. He did not expect that his young master was already so strong that he was no longer in the same world at all. Winter Soldier is nothing more than that. I can't even catch a punch of 10% of my strength. It's vulnerable. Leeway shook his head and put his hands in his pockets, as if he had just punched, not what he had hit. 10% strength? Tim's cheeks twitched again, and this percentage of power was such a bunker. How terrible is that percentage of power? Diana was also brilliant. She became more and more curious about her boss. Tread? Leeway walked towards Bucky, who was blown away by himself, and was quite satisfied with his strength in his heart. Very strong? It is many times stronger than what I thought. He thought he was at most 5 times the captain of the United States, but he didn't expect. He seemed to have undergone a geological change. A punch of 6 times the super soldier serum did not cause any harm to your body. This time the genetic modification was a complete victory. His body seems to be comparable to Aloy's. The increase in power can even crack the stainless steel metal made by adamantium with 1 punch. You must know that adamantium, but Wolverine's bones, is composed of extraterrestrial meteorites mixed with carbon alloys. Formation, with the property of being indestructible, is one of the hardest metals known on the Earth, and is as famous as vibranium. Even at a high temperature of 500,000, there will still be no signs of melting. But just like that, it was still broken by Leeway. Although Winter Soldier's mechanical arm was not a whole adamantium, it was just mixed with some, but even so, it was quite terrifying. Now playing 10 captains of the United States, shouldn't be a problem. Leeway smiled and looked at Bucky, who was hit into the wall in front of him. This guy struggled to get up, but he was firmly embedded in the wall. For a while, he couldn't escape. Although Winter Soldier is strong, this strength is actually, relatively speaking, for ordinary people, he is naturally extremely powerful. However, it is also strong and limited. If Diana is allowed to fight Winter Soldier, Diana can definitely blow Winter Soldier with 1 punch. After all, the two sides are not of the same magnitude. Compared with Leeway, who had not been injected with Super Soldier serum a few days ago, Winter Soldier's physical fitness is better than him. However, compared with Leeway, who has now been injected with Super Soldier serum, Winter Soldier seems to be a little underrated. Because Leeway's current comprehensive physical fitness is at least several times that of him. The reason why Leeway did not directly blow Winter Soldier to the ground and competed head-on with him for strength was not because his strength was not as good as him, but Leeway was accustomed to using the least cost to get the most benefits. You seem to be unconvinced. Leeway looked at Bucky in front of him with interest and was beaten into the wall. His injury was actually not serious. Moreover, most of Leeway's punch was blocked by his mechanical arm. It is a human instinct to save his life at the cost of a broken arm. Aha! Winter Soldier was struggling there, and the wall was crumbling. At the end, with a click, Winter Soldier slammed hard, and then got out of the wall. Again. What? Fight with me. Seeing Winter Soldier's unwilling look and the broken robotic arm, Leeway showed pity on his face. It's so miserable, but you still have to perform the task that Hydra has given you. Is it sad enough? Huh? Winter Soldier did move. The price Hydra brainwashed him was that he would never give up if he didn't kill Leeway. Then I will play with you again, right? This time, I don't use my strength, but use technique, to convince you. Leeway had just been injected with serum, he just needed to get familiar with it. It was just the most basic strength. Now, he wants to test the overall quality of his body. Roar! Bucky has a slightly metallic fist, and swiftly rushes towards Leeway. The speed is so fast that there is even a whistle of wind roaring through the air. If it is another person, I am afraid that he would have been punched to death even if he couldn't even see clearly. However, Leeway is no ordinary person after all. The increase in 5 super soldier serums makes Leeway's nerves and reactions comparable to Superman. So wow, at the moment when he was about to be hit, Leeway suddenly deflected and his body just turned sideways. The fist, with strong wind, suddenly checked from his side, but Leeway took advantage of it, stretched his palm forward, and quickly drew towards Winter Soldier's body. The reaction displayed at this moment was simply a flash of lightning, and the quick average person had no time to react. While the sound of his palm slashing through his clothes sounded, and even if Winter Soldier tried his best to dodge, there was still an extra bloodline in his abdomen. The wound may not be deep, but it is enough to affect his combat effectiveness. Even if he doesn't know what the pain is, he doesn't care about the pain caused by the abdominal wound. But he must ensure that his abdominal wound will not expand. Otherwise, there is no need for Leeway to kill him, he will lose too much blood and die. Therefore, he must guard against Leeway and deliberately attack his wounds. The fact is indeed the case. The wound in the abdomen has no effect on the Winter Soldier, but the blood is constantly flowing. This guy didn't seem to feel the pain in his body. His face was still cold, without any expression. He was just very stubborn and hit Leeway's face with a punch. However, this time Leeway did not dodge. Boom! Leeway's palm met Winter Soldier's right fist fiercely, and the two sides collided with the huge amounts of strength, and made a muffled noise. Winter Soldier was originally very confident that his power is definitely not something ordinary people can resist. However, Winter Soldier, whose face remained unchanged even with an abdominal injury, at the moment's face suddenly changed, because he felt the sound from his finger bones. Crack. The crisp voice instantly made Winter Soldier understand the fact that his finger bones were cracked. The Winter Soldier, who has always been known for his strength, has always been able to crush others, finally moved. Being able to directly and forcibly break his phalanx with the palm of his hand in a positive situation, this is enough to show that Leeway's power has surpassed non-human beings. However, the effects of force are mutual. Leeway's ability to crush his bones without any injury to himself is enough to prove that Leeway's bones are harder than Bucky's. Your bones are very fragile. Leeway smiled and opened his palm. There was a broken finger, which was broken by Leeway's palm. To be precise, it is not power, but oppression. If you change to a normal person, you should consider retreat at this time. After all, strength is not enough, and skills are not good. Then, apart from a deadly battle, there is only one way to escape. In a deadly battle, the opponent is better than himself in everything. As long as he doesn't kill himself, he shouldn't overturn. However, for Winter Soldier, all of this is meaningless. He has no thoughts of his own, he is just a puppet manipulated by others. Even in battle, he has always used force to overwhelm people, never considering the so-called skills. He never considered advantages and disadvantages. There was only one idea in his mind, and that was to complete the task. And his task is to kill Leeway. Therefore, before killing the opponent, he would never consider other things. The phalanx of the right fist is broken, it's okay. He still has a left hand. An arm made of metal alloy can't even be shot through by bullets, and there is no way to leave the slightest trace. Its hardness is definitely much harder than bones. If he has the ability, he will interrupt his left arm again. Although, the metal on the surface has been cracked by the guy in front of me, but the metal inside is still there. Without the slightest hesitation, Winter Soldier never even backed away, and suddenly slammed his left arm at Leeway. The speed is still so fast that it is hard to resist. No complicated skills are needed, just drop 10 times in one effort. It's so reckless. However, Leeway doesn't even need any complicated skills to deal with this punch. Winter Soldier may not be as strong as him, but this metal arm is hard enough. If Leeway competes head-on, he will definitely not be pleased if Leeway does not exert his strength. It's like a metal wall. If you punch it hard, your hand may scratch the skin or even your bones will break. But if you want to ask the wall if it feels pain, it's a foolish dream. Leeway didn't care how powerful Winter Soldier's punch was. He just staggered his legs and dropped his body slightly, letting his fists pass by. But at the moment his fist passed, his arm suddenly flared up, and an elbow hit, very hard. It all hit the Winter Soldier's waist. Technique, this is technique? Boom! With a muffled sound, Winter Soldier didn't even see Leeway's movements, but felt that his eyes were dark, and a sharp pain came from his waist. No matter how strong the body is, it is impossible to make every part of the body's defenses equally strong. In some places, what should be weak is still weak. For example, the lower body, the eyes, and the weakness of the waist. The powerful force instantly lost Winter Soldier's mind, only to feel a buzzing in his mind, like tinnitus. The body was also due to the confusion of the brain. The limbs were out of balance. All of a sudden, he lost his balance, and slammed directly on the ground, making a dull sound. Continue. Leeway played very well and hooked the hook to Winter Soldier. Although this guy is weak, he is a good opponent to familiarize him with his body. After all, ordinary people can still fight themselves like this, and they have long collapsed. But the Winter Soldier in front of him was a brainwashed monster, so he just shook his head and got up directly from the ground. After all, Winter Soldier's body was different from ordinary people, and he soon recovered. However, Leeway would not give him any chance at all. Boom! As soon as Winter Soldier put his hands on the ground, Leeway unceremoniously kicked Winter Soldier's waist. The reason why he didn't launch an attack directly was because he didn't want Winter Soldier to take a shot to resist his attack. In that case, this small advantage would not make any sense. So, as expected, Winter Soldier subconsciously wanted to stand up on the ground with both hands. Because of this, his body is completely devoid of any defenses, completely exposed in front of Leeway. Boom, boom, boom. The same part of the waist received heavy blows one after another, and Winter Soldier's depression can be imagined. Before he got up, he only felt a sharp pain in his waist, but the whole person had been kicked out, severely, hit the wall again. This time, Winter Soldier couldn't stand up anyway, because his lower limbs seemed to be scrapped. Hey, you are so weak. Leeway wiped his hands and looked at Tim and Diana, who were dumbfounded. Okay, the battle is over, let's see our poor enemy. When Leeway dragged the Winter Soldier like a dead dog to the underground parking lot that was almost in ruins, the old butler Alfred Pennyworth had already ended the battle. This time, Hydra's revenge operation ended with annihilation of the entire army. As for the opponents, they are all alive. In Wayne Manor, except for a few cars in the underground parking lot, as well as the flowers and plants in the manor, the rest are all intact. Well, when all 3 Apaches were destroyed, and more than 50 terrorists were also killed. As for the so-called elite death squads, this time they are really dead. The old butler was shot, although he was once the best agent of MI6. But he is old after all. After dealing with more than 30 terrorists, it was obvious that he was a little weak. So, he was shot in the arm. It was the leader of Hydra who did it, but the other party was directly blasted 10 times by the old butler and died. The old man vented his anger. However, fortunately, the penetrating injury did not hurt the bones. There is no need to perform surgery to remove bullet fragments, and there is no need to worry about any serious life threats. Moreover, you don't even need to go to the hospital. But after all, people are getting old, and although their energy may not decrease, their physical fitness functions have been declining. Therefore, in terms of recovery speed, it may take more than twice as long as others. It looks like it's time to inject some super soldier serum into the old man. Leeway looked at Alfred, but the old man was holding a cigar in his mouth. He seemed to be invincible back then. Obviously, he didn't take the gunshot wound to his heart. After all, the guns and bullets of the year were more knowledgeable. Hey, I'm sorry for the flowers and plants that the old housekeeper grows every day. The outside of the manor was completely unrecognizable this time, and all the walls and everything were broken down. There were also bullet marks on the walls, and even one wall was mostly destroyed. Well, Winter Soldier did it. In contrast, the fully enclosed non-cut tempered glass on the periphery of the villa is intact. Because no one would stand in front of the glass, that would be too conspicuous. Therefore, no one will be bored shooting glass. Apache had thought of breaking the window, because it was so handsome. However, it is a pity that Diana cut in half before getting close to the villa. As for the occasional stray bullets, they didn't even leave a trace on the tempered glass. Therefore, the loss this time is actually very small, so small, to the local tyrant Leeway, it feels like losing a few yuan. But Leeway is still very angry. It can be said to be very annoying. Hydra seemed to him to be ants, a group of people that he didn't care about at all. After all, compared to Ultron and Thanos in the future, these guys are simply not enough. But these ants actually come to provoke themselves. Moreover, when I injected the super soldier serum myself, it was so serious. If it wasn't for his body to be strong enough, then he would be terrible this time. 5 super soldier serums, what is this concept? So Leeway is very angry, and the consequences are serious. Hydra, starting today, it doesn't have to exist in this world. He has given this organization a list of kills. That Hydra headquarters in Europe, Leeway definitely knows it. Went out. Clean up the manor and set off in 2 days. Leeway said with a green face, and then beckoned, go upstairs, and meet the guys who are responsible for the finishing touches. It's really inefficient, I'm all done, they just came. Leeway was really disappointed with the United States Police. But he obviously didn't know that it was only 10 minutes after Hydra invaded and attacked Wayne Manor to his end. Yes, only 10 minutes, these guys have been wiped out. Upstairs, the police finally arrived late. After all, the Wayne Manor side is really playing too lively, it's missiles and helicopters. In addition, 20 kilometers around this area is the land of Wayne Manor, and there are no other buildings blocking the line of sight, and this firework is particularly dazzling. Half of the citizens of New York City saw it all. By the way, in the United States, it is natural for the rich to enjoy it. So basically the villa area has a specially equipped police station. These police officers are actually the specialized bodyguards of these wealthy people in the villa area. Any suspicious person entering the villa area will be interrogated by the police or even directly detained. These policemen are not the ones who wasted taxpayers' money in other places, but the elites transferred from various places. Fortunately, nothing happens on weekdays. They are the public bodyguards of the rich and the first line of defense. Once there is movement in the rich area, these police officers will all be dispatched, carrying various rifles and pistols, and rushing to the scene of the incident. Their aim is to never let taxpayers' money be spent in vain. Well, definitely, they are actually pretty useless. Just like this time, dozens of armed personnel and 3 armed helicopters sneaked into the rich area, and they did not notice at all. But after all, it was Hydra who planned the plan for nearly half a year. If it can be discovered by the police, then they won't have to mess around. However, even if the police had to break into private territory for the safety of the wealthy, when they arrived outside the villa, they all set up their carts and did not dare to act rashly, because at the moment, the gunshots in the villa have stopped. Therefore, it is not appropriate to act rashly now. There are only 2 possibilities for the gunfire to stop, that is, one of them is completely killed, and the police, all biased towards the rich, may have been killed. This kind of thing, in their opinion, is too common. On the other hand, because the old S.H.I.E.L.D. the New York headquarters building of the Strategic Science Corps was bombed, the new headquarters building is still under construction. After the reorganization, S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Nick Fury, at the moment, is living in the Los Angeles branch. At the moment, after receiving the news that Leeway's Wayne Manor was attacked, Nick Fury also hurriedly took some people, riding on several Bat fighter planes kindly provided by Leeway, on his way to Malibu. It can be said that Leeway affects the heartstrings of millions of people as a single person. The police are waiting for the arrival of the negotiator, because they think the rich have either died or been arrested. Therefore, it is necessary for negotiation experts to speak out. Until they saw the elevator of the villa, it seemed to be moving. That is, Leeway came out with Tim, Diana and others. Hold or fire? Stop, don't shoot. The chief of the police was a personal spirit, and when he saw this, he shouted loudly behind him, for fear that a young man in his bureau would accidentally go into fire. At that time, it is very likely that the kidnappers will tear up the ticket. This situation has happened several times before. As for how they confirm that the hostages are still alive, it's even simpler. Since terrorists are willing to negotiate, they must have a bargaining chip in their hands. What bargaining chip? Who else can be besides the rich? But the next moment, what surprised them was that a handsome Asian man came out of the elevator. Although they look a little blinded by Asians, everyone looks the same. However, it is absolutely clear to the rich. The United States is a very exclusive country, although it was originally a country composed of a large number of immigrants from all over the world. But in fact, there are only 2 kinds of people in this country, white people and people of color. Definitely, these are common sense. And common sense is for ordinary people. There is also a way of dividing, that is, the rich and the others. As long as you are rich enough, they won't care who you are. If they care, it means you are not rich enough. Mr. Lee. There were some bureau chiefs with big tongues, and some looked at Leeway as they approached him in an unbelievable manner. And he was originally an individual, and he rushed out from behind the convoy at the risk of being shot and killed by terrorists. His expression of excitement and joy was beyond words. Thank God, you are still alive. The chief of police was almost crying. If he hadn't seen the disgusting expression on Leeway's face, he would have embraced him. Therefore, in this society, acting is a basic human quality. What is the name of the ghost? Leeway glanced at him lightly, with a naked expression of disgust on his face, and said lightly, "You are here just right. Come in with me to wash the floor." What? The police chief had an incredible look, and said quickly, "Hey, since you came out alive, don't take risks anymore. Those terrorists don't know the goods and think you are Asian, so they let you out, and we just leave the rest to us." All right. The police chief's thinking is normal, because white people generally don't look down on people of color, whether it is black or yellow. So in his opinion, those terrorists probably think that he is a yellow race, so he should be a servant. That's why he was released and asked to report to the police. And that poor old housekeeper was probably regarded as the owner of the house. Well, the fat police chief could not help but observe a minute of silence in his heart. However, the next moment, he saw Leeway looking at him with a foolish expression. "You are fired. Stupid." "What?" The chief of police was taken aback. "Why do you want me to say it a second time?" Leeway sneered, and then said to a detective behind him, "Come in." When Leeway brought the dubious policeman into Wayne Manor, almost all the police couldn't help but swallow. The remains of terrorists and dead bodies were all over the floor, and blood was splashed all over the floor. This is like hell on earth. Fortunately, these policemen are elite and have seen these brutalities, but if so, I still feel the stomach tumbling. It was shocking. They had never seen such a bloody and terrifying scene. On each floor, there are at least 30 corpses. And they didn't forget that there were still 3 Apache gunship wrecks still on fire outside. One of them was also dismembered. The head and tail of the helicopter were on the east and the west. They had sent someone to check it, and it was split directly from top to bottom by an extremely sharp object. How did this special lady do it? Questions in every policeman's mind, and now, their heads are full of question marks. Which brutal terrorist has such a huge firepower? Moreover, the master of this house is the most brutal. There are more than 100 people in total. The police knew exactly how many people there were in this house. Except for the owner of the house Leeway and his little girlfriend Diana, there are only 3 old men who are helpless. Tim and the others don't know. An old butler, you can't expect him to fight. There are 2 more. One is the famous Wayne Group's top chief scientist and the old man Howard Stark. These 2 are actually even more difficult to count on. And Diana, as a woman, was also subconsciously ruled out. So, doesn't it mean that these people were all killed by Leeway alone? Oh, my God. Gulong. I don't know who swallowed, and it was especially loud in the quiet villa. Everyone looked at Leeway in unison, and his legs trembled a little. The rich man in front of them is almost equal to the butcher in their hearts. Move all these things out. Leeway looked at the policeman behind him, waved and commanded unceremoniously, "Move out all the things in the manor, as well as the fences. I have to demolish everything that can be demolished. They are all too dirty." "Gentlemen." The police chief who was fired by Leeway still approached him as if to please, and whispered, "Some things are still intact, also move out." Leeway glanced at him faintly. "These things are stained with blood and are too dirty. You know, I hate the smell of blood the most. The same is true of those walls. All of them will be demolished, and someone will be replaced tomorrow. Definitely, if you want it, you can give it to you." Leeway cast a glance at the police chief. The police chief smiled like a chrysanthemum, and his old faces were screwed together. "You laughed. Although the police are all good police officers, the chief of the police is not necessarily a good chief. Because, in many cases, police officers are not directed by the chief, but by specialized personnel in charge. Because they also know that the director is more used to intrigue than to direct others. Therefore, no one has ever expected this shit director to play any role." He said no, but it was hard to say what the director was thinking. Although these can be regarded as exhibits, there are too many exhibits that are not bad. Don't look at just flowers and plants, but the price of these things, it's really not cheap. The police chief saw with his own eyes that there were many green plants, but they were intact. If they were placed in their own homes, comrade, the chief would be pleased to think about it. This is a green plant worth tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it is really wasteful to just throw it away. The life of the rich is really extravagant. Comrade Secretary sighed secretly, but his hands were not slow at all, and he followed his subordinates to help clean up the dead bodies in Wayne Manor. It couldn't be better to let these guys take care of the finishing touches. After all, this is their profession. What Leeway is good at, only killing? The police are still very efficient, first moving out dozens of dead bodies. Then, there are those guns and ammunition as evidence. There are also bullet cases on the ground, which also need to be recorded. Dozens of police came in and out, but it was not possible to evacuate the huge villa in a short while. It is estimated that they can be busy until noon tomorrow. This is the result of a lot of steps they skipped in order not to disturb Leeway's rest and speed up. If Leeway is unwilling to cooperate, they will not be able to lock down and investigate the villa. However, the villa can no longer live in it for the time being. It is estimated that we will find a hotel to stay temporarily. Excuse me? Leeway frowned suddenly, looked at the chief of police, and then walked quickly to the elevator. Please. The chief of the police is naturally not an ignorant person. He is so mature. He watched Leeway go away with a smile on his face. As for Leeway, after entering the elevator, all the police voluntarily let out. It's not that I don't want to stand with Leeway, but I don't dare. Even now, they seem to be able to feel the murderous aura of this rich man. Those are hundreds of heavily armed terrorists. He was able to attack several police stations, but he was killed by himself? This combat power is really extremely cruel. He wouldn't be a mutant, would he? A policeman whispered to his companion next to him. The surrounding police nodded in agreement, because how could human combat power be so brutal? Unless it's the Captain of the United States. But how could the Captain of the United States be a yellow guy? Whether he is mutant or not, he is a rich man above all. The police chief also heard what they said, patted the policeman on the shoulder, and said with a bit of meaning, "Mutant, it's no secret in this world. Since Mutant assassinated President Kennedy more than 2 decades ago, the story of Mutant has spread. However, as the chief of police said, no matter who it is, it must be a rich person first. As long as it is a rich person, it doesn't matter who it is. In other words, no matter who you are, as long as you have no money, nothing can be done. Lee, are you all right?" Leeway took the elevator down to the bat base on the -3rd floor. Nick Fury rushed up excitedly, followed by dozens of heavily armed S.I.E.L.D. agents. Several stealth bat fighters are parked behind them. However, the space of the bat fighter is not enough to accommodate so many people. Obviously, Nick Fury squeezed them with them. Except for the driver, they are probably for the better with more people, and they are afraid that less people will threaten Leeway's life. I have to say that he has the intention. Do you see me like someone in trouble? Leeway shrugged and said indifferently, "By the way, Winter Soldier was caught by me. He should have been brainwashed by someone from Hydra. Take him back and see if you can get rid of the things in his mind." Clear. Nick Fury obviously didn't understand, but still nodded sharply. Although I don't know what Leeway is talking about, it does not prevent him from nodding. Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes. When I was on a mission with the Captain of the United States decades ago, I transferred into the cliff and was frozen. It was dug out by Hydra and became a Winter Soldier. However, the current technology is not developed enough, and there are not enough cameras or anything. Therefore, Hydra has always sent Winter Soldier to carry out assassination missions, but every time it is a perfect sneak, killing all those who see him. Ever since, S.H.I.E.L.D. knows that there is such a person. However, they didn't know who the Winter Soldier was. Howard was also watching, but he was more shocked than Nick Fury. He was thinking whether he should also inject Super Soldier Serum. But then I think that this is not enough. I have money. Why do you want to commit a personal risk? How about getting a suit of armor? Just like Leeway's Batman suit, it's also very handsome. The more I think about it, the more Howard feels it is possible. It needs to be bulletproof, and it is better to have other functions, such as flight. Then it seems like that your own nuclear reactor and Lucius's mechanical shell must be built as soon as possible. Leeway did not expect that his own battle would make Father Howard prepare in advance to build the Iron Man suit. Well, the big shit in college, it's probably impossible to think of it. But knowing, Howard won't understand how shocking it really is before actually doing it. People who have not experienced true power will never understand this, but Howard does get itchy. The Batman base of Leeway originally made him feel unbearable. Coupled with the explosive force of Leeway, Howard's heart is full of envy, jealousy, and hatred. He is also a rich man. Why is this difference so big? No, I have to become stronger too. The idea of comparison in Comrade Huo's mind suddenly rose. Thinking, it must be more sassy than Leeway. "Go, Lucius, let's go in." Howard called roar towards Lucius, who was on the side. Lucius nodded in a daze. "I really don't know, what the hell is this guy doing? Didn't you say that you were a little frightened? You want to take a few days off to find a few girls to have a good time? Lucius is looking forward to this kind of thing too, man, you know. But, this damn guy, why did you kill it downstairs again? Did you promise to arrange for me with 2 girls? Forgot? Lucius was quite tangled inside. Although he loves research, but Niu also likes it very much. Seeing Lucius reluctantly go downstairs with Howard, Leeway didn't think much about it at all. He only thought that these 2 corgi crazy demons were starting to play some new stuff again. After all, the power of wisdom is infinite. Right, Nick? Leeway looked at Nick Fury next to him, and said quietly, in a few days, you arrange some S.H.I.E.L.D agents to go to Eastern Europe with me. Eastern Europe. Nick was taken aback for a moment, but Leeway nodded. Well, this is S.H.I.E.L.D's first mission, completely wipe out Hydra. Scare. Nick was taken aback by Leeway's words. If this Hydra can be wiped out, how about waiting till now? Why, do you have an opinion? Leeway glanced at him. Nick shook his head. Hurriedly, no, time, place, will we act together at that time, or, together, I will notify you in advance, you just have to be ready. With that said, Leeway then left. Star.